This is the Seahawks Podcast. I'm Brandan Schultz of the Military Seahawks, and joining me today as we go down our draft list, a good buddy, Adam Emmert, Clint Bonner. Adam, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. I'm fired up for this one. This is going to be fun. I mean, I figured we can maybe put a clickbaity headline on this one and get everybody all revved up about it. And I don't know, maybe we should just talk some random catfish about like one of the other good Seahawks podcasts here. This feels like something the Hawks Nest would do, but then just like blow it out of proportion and then, follow it up with facts, logic, and reason and a good discussion like they always do. So, yeah.
I feel like it's time we called out Nathan Santo for something.
Yeah, for doing good.
Yeah.
No.
You can't have that.
Oh, yeah.
He'll probably make it like a top 5 list or something, put it in his movie club or something like that, right? Those fun, enjoyable fellows from the Hawks Nest, right? So it was a bizarre week out there in Seahawks podcastingville, but I think we're gonna leave all that aside because, gentlemen, we got something a lot more fun to talk about, Brandan and Adam, right? So I was enthralled. You guys, you send me a text, go, hey, we got something coming out tonight. Talk about Witherspoon. I watched it. I clicked on it. You guys got me to click. So I watched it and I was like, this is awesome. I was like, can we do one about JSN now? And you guys obliged. So I'm fired up to talk about our 20th pick coming right up here, man.
Well, it only makes sense. Adam and I got to talk about our favorite pick of the draft. Now you get to talk about your favorite pick of the draft, and we get to close it out. And the thing is that, the Seahawks, they had 3 first rounders that they got over the course of 2 rounds. Mm-hmm. And so bonus, I guess maybe we have to have a favorite third because we have 3 first round picks.
Yeah. Well, you guys did see that, right? I'm assuming, right, with the first round grade they had on Hall. So,
right. Yeah.
Which
John,
is
coming from John Boyle within the team. Shocking that you would hear from inside the team that they had 3 first round grades and they got all 3 of them.
Well, not just that, they also were going to take Charbonnet. So if you fudge the math a little bit there, that's I think boys, we got 4 first round picks this year against the Let's Ride curse. So Adam, I think your conjuring was that much more powerful. We actually got 4 first round picks. So
and then then you have to think ahead to next year.
Oh, yeah.
When the guy that we get with Denver's pick is still on the board.
Yeah.
And we hear from inside the team that they actually had a first round grade on that guy.
5 first round picks you conjured up with the Let's Ride curse. I mean, and with that,
Oh, there's not much left to say. I mean, other than just nailed it. I find it interesting. I saw, another YouTuber talking a little bit about this report that came out from the team source about all of their picks and how they viewed them. And he's like, you got it right from the source. Like, this is it. And you could choose to believe it. That's fine. I don't know that that's a bad move or a dumb idea or anything. But for me personally, like, I'm looking at that going, yeah, the first round pick on Hall. Sure. Cool. All right. Zach too? Okay. Sure. Yeah. I don't think that the team is putting out things like, we just couldn't trade out of the Charbonnet pick at all. And we didn't really want to pick there. So, we took this guy that, we think is going to fit a need and it'll be okay. But, no, he's a first rounder. So LJ Collier was a first rounder. So just something to talk about.
And it might be true. It's just my skepticism level goes high when it is from a team source.
Yeah. And also if the team source, and then of course, Pete Carroll, just Mr. Optimism himself, like they're all first rounders, right? The UDFA guys, Big Coop from Florida State, perhaps our new thigh arm. So that's my UDFA crush, boys, is that hopefully Big Coop can come through, but clearly a first rounder as well, right? So they love all their new toys, which of course you're going to. It's they just unwrapped them. They didn't even get to play with the new toys quite yet. So they're all beloved at this point, which is the
fun part about this time of the year. All these guys are awesome until we see them on the field in a Seahawks uniform and we get to point out some of the weaknesses.
Yes, and then we have other shows. We have other shows for just that, right? So that's okay.
Yeah, the hype train about this draft class is in full throttle. There's no doubt about that. And it's something that I'm trying to guard against a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because you start looking through the picks and you're like, man, that guy could probably play a little bit. That guy could play a little bit. That guy could play a little bit. But they're not all going to play a little bit. Like, it's just not the way that it works. But I know for a fact that our pick at 20, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, he's a first rounder, not just because they selected him there, but the whole league felt that way about him. And that's one of the things that should have 12s fired up.
Yeah, man, that I 1000% agree. And the small victory lap is that before the draft, we did our what pick will unlock this whole thing. And to me, it was always pick 20. And I always looked at that as a pure luxury because I'm like, they got the 5, they got the 20. We got the 37 and the 52. And I was all on board of 3 of the 4 being defense, but taking the offensive piece at 20. But literally, well, I guess figuratively, not my wildest dreams did I think that JSN would slip. I just did not think he'd be there. I was Zay Flowers, Addison, whatever it might be, but no way, shape, or form did I think this dude would get there. And then he falls there, and then we do it, man. We take the guy, and I thought it'd be really cool, kind of just to get on and talk about this. And Brandon, we got a couple of tweets queued up as well. But before we, I think, look at the new room that we got coming on, I think it's kind of cool to reflect on what kind of wide receiving room is this dude walking into. So Brandon, if you would queue up the first one, please, from @WrongOpinionMan out on Twitter. He brings this to the table because it's almost like you start to take what is really, really good and perhaps a great wide receiving core already to begin with, start to take it for granted because of just how consistent Tyler Lockett has been for now, going into year 9, I think. And this is actually DK's 5th year coming up. He's played 4 years already. And, the stats kind of speak for themselves, but you kind of just, you can forget just how darn good a thing we have going on already, hence making it a luxury pick. And we talked about that idea of, are the Seahawks looking at positions of already strength and trying to get to elite status? And we'll talk about that today too. But the stuff on the board there, any one of those particular stats jumping out to you, Brendan?
Well, for one, I'm glad that they're facts, because if they were opinions, then I think we'd be using the wrong Twitter account to make a point. But first in NFL among receiving duo for catches. That feels right. Second in the NFL among receiving duos, which that one jumps out just as being second in terms of yards. That one surprises me a little bit just because it's not a volume offense through the receivers that you think about generally. Touchdowns, maybe not surprising because obviously Russell Wilson threw a lot of touchdowns. It's the yards that stands out to me.
Yeah. So on the screen there, 8,357 yards between Metcalf and Tyler in the last 4 years since Metcalf's been drafted. How about you, Adam? Any of those poking at you a bit, or did you think they were that high as a combo before we were looking at this earlier today?
If you had put this, or if you'd asked me the question without this graphic being put up, I would have said they're probably somewhere between 3rd and 5th, and pretty much all the categories would have been my guess, because they are maybe the best duo in the entire NFL. It's kind of tough to argue in a lot of ways. And the other thing is that, this covers some of Russ's end of his career with the Seahawks, and then also the year with Geno.
Yep.
And the story has been for years and years, well, Pete Carroll just wants to run the ball. He just wants to run the ball. That's all he wants to do. It's like, yeah, he wants to run the ball so that he can throw the hell out of the ball. There's a rhyme and reason to it. And just because he wants to run the ball a little bit more doesn't mean that these guys can't put up these crazy numbers. And then you add somebody like JSN into the mix too, with Geno coming off a record-setting year for quarterback for this franchise. And offensively, it's easy to get fired up a little bit.
Yeah, and Brandon, so Adam's mentioning the record-setting year, which we all know about the yards, but diving into some of the stats today too, there was another QB stat, which I was curious. I was like, okay, we know about the yards, but does Geno own any other Seahawks records in terms of, I guess, just Geno versus Russ? Springboard of what Adam's saying there is that, so last year in 2020, so 2 years ago, Russ had 550 pass attempts, right? So it's like, all right. And that was let Russ cook. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. And as Adam's saying, run the ball so that we could throw the heck out of the ball. Well, guess what? So Russ had 558 in 2020. Geno threw the ball 572 times last year. He was eighth in the league in attempts last year. It's just another one of those things that I don't think people would correlate or think that Geno had that kind of that kind of volume in the pass game last year. And he was eighth. And he threw the ball more. There's some notables. While Josh Allen had the UCL injury, he still threw the ball more times than Josh Allen last year, which kind of blew my mind. Now, there's Brady. Brady was like 730, and there's some dudes in the 650s and all that. But still, for Geno to be eclipsing Russ's biggest year just in attempts was also another thing that's like, to me, it's just that there's this myth out there, which Brandan, now we can flip over, but a big myth out there that, this is a wasted pick. It's a luxury pick. The room's too crowded as is. And I'm sitting here going, Boulder Dash, I just don't buy into the fact that the room is too crowded.
Yeah. And I suppose it's not so much that the room is too crowded. It's just when you look at those previous numbers and you think about wanting to run the ball, about wanting to run the offense through Tyler and DK, it just didn't seem like a necessity that they would need to go there in the first round. But like you were saying, you were looking at this pick as more of a luxury pick anyway. Mm-hmm. And for the top receiver to still be there on the board when they selected at 20, with that being a little surprising, you could see how that would be enticing.
I mean, completely enticing. And this room that they had in Ohio State. So, Adam, we have, who'd you like better last year? This is kind of fun to talk about, right? You see a little Garrett Wilson, the rookie of the year, putting that in quotations again, because Ken Walker should have won that. And Chris Olave on the Saints. Do you have a particular wide receiver that you fancy one over the other?
Oh, I love Mason Olave.
Yeah.
That guy is a baller, a straight up baller. And then that's taking nothing away from Garrett Wilson. He's has the potential to be extremely excellent in this league, and look for his numbers to increase with, I don't know, maybe the 12th best quarterback of all time showing up on his team this year. However you want to rank that. Yeah. He's gonna have a lights out year. And both those dudes pointed at JSN when he was just bursting on the scene and being like, nah, that dude, he's the one who takes the keys when we drive the car to the club. Like, he's the man.
It's pretty telling, right? So we got this tweet on the screen from at Seahawk Nerd, and it's a quote from the Ohio State head coach, and just exactly saying what Adam said without reading the whole quote there. So hopefully you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening on audio, you can catch it youtube.com.
I'll read the quote for the audio listeners.
Oh, you know what?
Brandon. No, this is Brandon's wheelhouse.
Brandon's got the that's true. Brandon's got the sultry, maybe we'll put some little background music into this thing, a little pan flute perhaps.
You don't need to overproduce it. I mean, come on now. Just trying to think of the listeners.
Okay, you're thinking of the listeners. Go ahead, Brandan.
The coach said, I remember they were doing an interview with Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jaxon, and the question was asked, who's the best out of all three of you? And Garrett and Chris both pointed at Jaxon. They said, I think he quickly gained the respect of the guys in that room as a freshman by his work ethic. He doesn't say a whole lot, but is very competitive. And so it's the work ethic point in this quote that I think really jumps out at me.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty, well, I guess the part that still jumps out to me is still two alpha, amazing NFL wide receivers who were both darn really, really good rookie seasons, and not with exciting quarterback play in New Orleans last year or the Jets last year, like at all. Who still were balling.
What are you trying to say, Clinton? Andy Dalton and Zach Wilson don't do it for you?
Not anymore. The red rifle, he had his days back there being fairly mediocre, being his best Matty mediocre that he could be.
Let's be honest, Mike White got Garrett Wilson that award.
That's true. Until he had no shoulders left and we played them and embarrassed them, which was kind of fun. So or no ribs. He had basically half a body when we played him. And just to say how bad Zach Wilson was, Mike White had like half a body and they still threw him out there. And that was
they're like, you can play, right?
Yeah, that was a mistake.
They just had to find the 45th doctor to clear him. That was all.
Exactly. That was after a week or two of being off, right? That is funny. But that's still the part that tickles me a bit. And then the thing is, the big piece for me, boys, is that they're like, JSN, there's folks out there, this is a wasted pick because there's not going to be enough targets to go around. So it's like, well, number one, we're talking about Geno throwing the ball 572 times last year. I could expect that number to go higher. I'm not saying it gets into the 650 range, but you add a piece like JSN, I think the number, and Geno in a full second year, and I think a offense that's going to convert more on third downs, I expect that number to continue to go higher. And the other piece is, okay, even if the volume is not huge, JSN, another quote unquote criticism is he didn't see the other team's best cornerbacks because he had Olave and Garrett Wilson. Okay, I could understand that. But what do you think is going to happen this year? Like, is JSN going to be going against Jalen Ramsey? Like, no, he's going to be getting the slot corner or the safety they bring down, or, sometimes linebackers. And good luck. Good luck with that. But even on the Ohio State team, he still had 112 targets. He had 95 receptions for over 1,600 yards and a catch ratio of 85% on a loaded team. So I just want to kind of, myth bust that first thing that this is somehow a waste and like his skills won't go to, the best use in Seattle. I just don't think it's accurate whatsoever. And, Adam, I'm not sure if there's anything you would lob on top of that or argue against the other way.
Well, I'm one of the people that wasn't thrilled about picking a receiver at 20. And you talked a little bit about our pre-draft shows, and we talked about, what pick unlocks things and that sort of thing. And was a consensus that it was around 20. And my argument was, okay, at 20, you get that interior dude. There's going to be one guy that's, a low first round, high second round grade, somewhere in there that is quote unquote a reach. And which I'm so sick of the reach discussion. Is a reach more scary, or is having a giant freaking hole in the middle of your defensive line more scary? I know which way I vote. So I wasn't thrilled that they went wide receiver there. However, if you look at it through a different lens than I usually look at football, offensively speaking, this could be a nice piece for this offense, and to double down on your Geno contract and try to get the entire value that you can out of the Geno contract. And I think that's important. And so in that sense, I think JSN could be a big difference maker. And the idea that his skill set would be wasted in Seattle, that goes back to the idea of people thinking that Seattle runs the ball a lot more than they actually do or even want to do. And the thing about it is that there's going to be plenty of targets to go around throughout the season. And if he's opening things up for Tyler and DK, let's say his stats aren't huge, but it allows Tyler and DK to just run the show. That's still a huge win. So there's a lot of ways that JSN can bring a lot of value to this offense. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a crap ton of receptions. And the whole idea, it doesn't line up against their best corner. Well, who in the slot does?
Right.
Like it rarely happens. No, he's not going to face the Ramseys of the world unless everybody starts doubling down on DK and Tyler and being like, all right, well, beat us with the rookie. And the rookie goes out there and slays them. Then, yeah, maybe you see a little rotation here or there. But then it just takes the best corner off of DK or Tyler. Pick your poison. Good freaking luck.
Yeah, it's kind of the reverse argument over having, do you go pass rush or do you load up on corners and have two shutdown guys like we talked about with Witherspoon? I think the part of this argument, though, that we're missing on, what do people do in fantasy? Like, which receiver on the Seahawks do you pick first? And how is that going to screw me over then in week 5 when I don't know which one of them to start?
Yeah, I think you're precise. That I think the loudest people about this being a wasted spot, it's coming from literally Fantasyland. I think you're right. I think that's where this ire is coming from. That he's gonna be wasted there because he's got talent all around him, and I think it's a very salient point there, Brandan, for sure, dude. It's well, I'm excited for play one, week one. The schedule's coming out on Thursday. We'll get to see who that is. I just can envision very, very clearly 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, a quick 3-step drop, and Gino could do his quick little thing, like process. And it's one of those 3 dudes, probably one of Tyler or JSN, just sitting wide open for like an easy 6 yards. They, fall forward for 2 more. It's 2nd and 2. Like that's the kind of, and I know that's like a weird prediction and a small microcosm, but that's the kind of problem that they're going to pose all year. Gino processes extraordinarily well. When we didn't have a 3rd receiver, when Tyler got dinged, when Marquise Goodwin couldn't play, the offense took a gigantic hit. It just was not the same. This dude, and we'll look at some other stats as we go here too. Actually, Brandon, might as well. Let's
my favorite stat, I think, is coming up next. Actually,
there you go. So, looking at this too, this dude is not just, yes, he might start in the slot and he might be there for, year 1, year 2, but he's not just some slot dude who could only do things like a Cole Beasley or something like that. Like he's way, way different. So Brandon, we put a tweet up by Samuel Gold. What do you want to tell the folks about this particular graphic?
Well, I feel like if you look at the graphic, it speaks pretty well for itself with JSN being on the top. And what it's looking at is the difference between how well players do it. It's yards per route run versus the coverage scheme.
That was my question. I just wanted to be called on as the dumb kid in the back of the class.
Oh, yeah.
What is YPRR? Yeah.
Yards per route run. And whether it's man coverage or zone coverage, essentially JSM was the best in college. And maybe when you look at the man column, it lines up with Addison, Johnson. These names are super small. Hyatt. No, the guy above Hyatt. Downs.
Josh Downs.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those 4 guys are about even, but it's still on the right side of the graphic. And nobody better versus zone.
Dumb kid in the class has another question.
Go ahead.
So
Adam.
This is just the amount of yards he runs around on every route.
It has to do with his catches, but they average it out. Yeah. It averages out though per route run. So it's still receiving yards. It's just averaged out over the number of routes run.
Right. What does this stat tell you? Like, I mean,
he's really good. He's the best. It tells you whether it's man or zone scheme that JSN gets open more than most college receivers and catches a lot of yards.
Yeah.
Well, how does the amount of yards you run during a route dictate whether you're open or not?
Maybe
it's when you receive the ball and then gain yards.
That's yards after the catch.
It's included in that.
So this is like
yards after the catch is after you catch it. This is also the where you catch it at and then run.
Okay.
It's all the yards.
All right. I guess I'm not too concerned with what he does before he catches it. But okay.
Well,
he's
good
open
news,
before he catches it.
Yeah,
that's all. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. Like, are you open or not open? Like,
right. I think that's where this gets to, is that, like, no matter what, right? Whether it is man or zone, he's the best at both in entire college football. He's still, yes, he's close to Addison. He's close to, or better said, Downs is close to JSN. Addison's close to JSN in man, but JSN's still the best against man. And then he's also the best against zone. Whereas some of the dudes, if you're just listening on the audio, some of the fellas like deltas between how they perform versus man versus zone, it's a pretty darn large gap, like amongst themselves, like amongst the individual. Whereas JSN is just top right corner, and the delta between either man or zone coverage is tiny. It's almost non-existent. He's just damn good all the time. And I think that's the one takeaway out of it is like, there's an elite profile sitting right there. And that's our quote unquote wide receiver 3, which again is going to be a problem for the rest of the NFL.
Okay. So this stat just lets us know that he can get open against man or zone.
Correct.
And receive the ball and get yards.
Well, and there's an important part of it. That's why I would have been a little more curious about Yak, because that's the stat to me that I think the Seahawks have been missing from this passing game over the past few years. Both Tyler and DK have been incredible. You saw the first slide that we put up, first in this, first in that, second in this, best duo in the league, no doubt. But I think if you looked at Yak, they'd be probably in the high 20s, low teens. They don't get a lot of yards after catch. And it's one of the big things missing from this offense. If JSN is truly that sort of jitterbug type that can really do that, that is a pretty valuable piece.
And is it a scheme dependent thing? Like, is he going to be Cooper Kupp in like how he was in the Rams offense, but translate that to the Seahawks offense?
Yeah. And I think the amount of 11 personnel, right? The amount of time that we got 3 wide receivers out there, that's going to go up by quite a bit. And if, Samuel Golds, he wrote a nice post on field goals. I think it was either yesterday or the day before, but either way, go check it out. He's got lots of different highlights there too, but he's explicitly calling out JSN's ability to run the slants, do the drag routes, and then get upfield after the ball. Now, hey, that's college football. You could expect the coverage to be stickier, even though it might be a linebacker you get smashed up against, or a safety down the box, or the corner, or the nickel. Whatever, they're still gonna be NFL dudes, even if they're journeyman, corners, which happens a lot for a guy in the nickel. But that's his thing, Adam. Like a lot of that is just catching in stride and getting a field. And if we just also can talk about for a second, Russ rarely used the middle of the field. Gino, his heat map, really likes the middle of the field, and now we got a dude who could really work the middle of the field. And unlike Tyler entering year 9, Tyler doesn't want to take hits, and we're all okay with that. When it's third down and he has to get it, he goes for it. When it's first down, he could get a first down. He's happy just literally taking a knee, making it 2nd and 2, and we're all fine with that. JSN's going to be that dude who just gets north after catching it, which I think again, which Brandan was saying. That was also being highlighted in that. Yes, I admit a little bit confusing graphic we put up.
Well, I just hadn't heard the term before or the stat, so I was just more curious. I imagine that some of the listeners they were wondering yards per route run or whatever. So what? What does that mean? Is that important? And so yeah, I just wanted to flesh it out a little bit so that we all knew what we were talking about. You talked about the idea of them running a more 11 personnel or a lot more 11 personnel. And this is where my concern comes in just a little bit. Is that a good thing? Is that really where we want to be going? Because in some ways, if you're going for that third weapon, I'd have rather them gone with one of the tight ends that were available at the time. I can't remember who was on the board and who was gone by that point.
Yeah, Michael,
but a couple.
Mayer was.
Yeah, Mayer was more the pass catching one, right? Was it Kincaid that was more the balanced one?
No,
he ended up in Buffalo.
Kincaid's the big slot guy, and Buffalo ended up taking him late first, so he was available. But they were all there.
They were all
there. The entire, just like the entire lineup was there, with 4 or 5 that were really considered high end tight ends.
Yeah, I think I'd almost would have rather see that and be a little bit more in 12 personnel, where now you've got a guy that can also block on the edge, or it can be a puller in that sort of thing, and really affect the run game, and then still give you that big target over the middle. Now, is that going to be as explosive as somebody like Smith-Njigba? Probably not. But I do think that it would help unlock some of the running game a little bit for the Seahawks. And I think that's really important. We talked about Gino setting the franchise record for passing attempts, or at least more than Russ and all of that. And that's not sustainable. That's not how we're going to win football games. That's not how you're going to get the best value out of Gino. You need to be able to run the ball more. And I think you'd have a little more success out of that being multiple out of 12 personnel that disguises whether it's run or pass maybe a little bit more than when you trot Njigba out there. You're like, okay, it's probably a 75% chance they're throwing the football here.
Which is fine if you're actually converting it. Then it doesn't much matter whether or not they know what's coming at them. If you're just really good at doing what you're doing and you have 3 good options. Personally, I would have been pissed if they would have gone tight end with Zay Flowers, JSN on the board. Like, I was thinking maybe tight end as an option if top receivers weren't on the board, because you know you're still pretty loaded at tight end with Noah Fant and Will Dissly. Like, I feel like we're okay. Probably don't need to go out and get the third tight end with
well, Fant's at the end of his deal. Dissly's coming off the injury.
Sure.
And so if you're talking about, I mean, everybody was obsessed with the QB of the future thing. What about the tight end of the future? That's something to think about. And then the one thing that I think nobody really talks about with the JSN pick is that, you know, I don't know how much this is really going to be the massive game changer that we all talk about. I think it'll be helpful. I just worry, like, what difference does a third receiver make if, you know, you can't block anybody in the middle in that sort of thing, and you've got pressure coming up the middle, and makes it hard on Geno. And it's almost like this draft you built backwards from the outside in rather than the inside out. And so that can be a little frustrating for a fan that views it the way that I do.
I want to just ask 2 questions. Well, at least probably one question that's maybe like a double question there too is, but do you think we have, between Evan Brown, Olu, and then Bradford, do you think we have upgraded the interior offensive line versus where we left off last year?
I know what Evan Brown is as a center. He's a darn good one. I know that.
Okay.
I know that. I've seen him do it.
Right.
You know, Ulu, like, yeah, can he be? Maybe. There's some people that in the draft community that really loved his game. There's a lot of people that said he's not nearly physical or aggressive enough for his size. So, you know, the jury's out a little bit. And as far as Bradford goes, he's a big dude, and that's great. And I love the idea of that at guard. He's also a later round or a mid-round offensive lineman that we haven't had a lot of success when we've drafted there and picked him there. And then secondly, his skill set is definitely more as a mauler. It's not as a guy who's really good in pass protection. And if you're going to kind of be a more pass happy offense, then, you know, does he really fit the bill? So I'm not sure, I guess, in short.
I will say that I like your interior O-line argument a lot better than your tight end argument.
Well, look, I didn't want the tight end either there. I wanted freaking defense. I wanted freaking defense at 20. And so this is me in now what is talk yourself into it season. Yeah. And so I'm trying to talk myself into this and look at the positives in all of that stuff.
Let's look at this positive right here, talking about rankings of wide receivers and depth charts.
Why did they get one wrong?
Yeah, starting right at the top, right? But this was Mike Clay. So at Mike Clay NFL, he put out his wide receiver depth charts, and this is taking into consideration basically 4 or 5 man units, which I thought for our exercise would be more kind of fun to just look at the top 3, because whatever, you know, that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I would imagine Mike Clay is also looking at, for the most part, the top 3, and that's probably 95% of how he's trying to rank this thing. So for those that can't see it, Seattle is ranked number 2 with obviously DK, Tyler, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Then we got Eskridge and Derek Young. So pretty great room there for sure. And the Bengals are number 1, but I wanted to kind of put these up on the screen to look at some of the ones that are ranked pretty high. Mm-hmm. And then like discuss honestly, or, you know, I would hope, where do we see the Seahawks unit versus some of these that are actually ranked pretty darn high, or are there some here where you're like, ooh, that's way too low. So I cut it off at 20. That's what they had the Buffalo Bills at 20 with Diggs, Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, and then a couple other dudes. But Brandan, for you, are there any here that you're like, hey, that should be higher, that should be lower, just one that's kind of calling her name?
Well, we can look at the Bengals real quick just because they were the number 1 unit. And I mean, the noticeable thing is that when you're at the top, you are really looking for 3 deep in terms of the names that are there. Because once you get to 4 and 5, I mean, unless you're a fan of the team, most fans out there probably don't even know Dwayne Eskridge or Derek Young, just as I don't know who Trenton Irwin and Charlie Jones are for the Bengals, but I know Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. And just as I know with the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Actually, I don't even really follow Braxton Berrios a whole lot either. So
he's the ex-Jet.
Yeah,
He's a nice slot receiver.
Yeah,
I would call him a slightly above average, a plus slot receiver.
The one then I guess the next group that jumps out at me where I can go 3 deep is CD Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and Michael Gallup of the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm. They have a Cooks problem with that one.
The Cooks is a little bit of a problem, but it's at least a name that I recognize. DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore for the Cardinals. That's a division rival, so I probably am a little bit more familiar with Rondale Moore than average fans too. But
he hasn't done anything yet, Rondale Moore, right? Because he got injured himself.
Not a ton.
No, not much. And
one of the ones that I actually like is the Commanders group with Terry McLaurin,
thank you,
Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, De'Ami Brown, and I know all 5 of those guys.
Yeah, I think they're actually, that's one. Yeah, it's funny you say that because they have them 11th on this sheet, and I really like. I mean, I think McLaurin's done it with terrible quarterbacks, and he's been consistently good. And then Jahan Dotson had a very nice rookie year. Mm-hmm. I think Curtis Samuel is just a darn good. As a 3, it's like, ooh, on other teams, he'd be a pretty easy 2. And as a 3, he's pretty I also think they deserve to be in the top 10 also. But the thing for me, and Adam will bring in the second too, is I just don't look at any of these, even the Bengals, right? I think the Bengals get the separation because Chase is who Chase is. There's Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase,
DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill.
But maybe you're putting like Stephon Diggs up there. Like we're talking like elite, right? And the folks who are on a Hall of Fame style career trajectory. Not that DK can't get there, but he's not there yet. But Jamar Chase and Jefferson, you got to play for a while to do it. But they are Hall of Fame caliber wide receivers right now. So I understand that means something. And T. Higgins is a darn good number 2. He's very good. He could be that's how I think I grade this. Like, could your 2 be a 1? And T. Higgins, yep. Could your 3? I think
he's like some of those receivers that we've seen in the past to me that were a 1B and then one day asked to be a 1, and you're like, he's just not quite a 1A. He's just not quite. He's a damn good 2. I'm not taking anything away from that. He's a damn good 2. But the name on this list that bugs me in terms of the Bengals is the idea of Tyler Boyd he's I've always felt like he's been pretty well overrated. Now, does that mean that their wide receiver room is much better than ours because they have Tyler Boyd? I don't think so. But also, JSN, we don't know yet. It's a projection. So maybe that's where that comes in.
Well,
I think that has to play into it somehow.
I think so, and I guess the projection for me is like this time next year. I'm not sure it's going to be all that close. And that's of course a homer projection, but just going down the third wide receivers, just try to juxtapose them versus Jackson, right? Tyler Boyd, you just said what you said about them. Braxton Berrios, a true scatty slot guy. Okay. Quez Watkins on the Eagles. No. Michael Gallup. Okay. Nice third receiver. That's cool.
Brandon Cooks has to be their third.
You could probably flip-flop that, right? So
yeah.
You likely can flip-flop that. That's a valid point for sure. You put Cooks third. Again, Cooks is a kind of steady Eddie. He's not going to knock your socks off at this point of his career, but he's a professional wide receiver. And he's
just
good
putting slot guys in the third on this list? Is that what's
I don't think
on?
so, because Quentin Johnson's not a slot guy at all. The Chargers just took him, and he's basically like another Mike Williams. Like doesn't really get a lot of separation, but he's a big body. So I feel like they just drafted a clone of Mike Williams, which if I'm the Chargers, I wouldn't do that because I don't think Mike Williams is all that dynamic. I think he's good. He wins a lot of contested balls and he gets a large target, a lot of volume, but why have a second dude who could do something that your other dude does already? Russell Gage, okay, well, nice third for the Bucks, right? Hunter Renfrow, good slot guy for Vegas. I think Vegas has a nice receiving core. I like Jacoby Myers. Devontae Adams is, a Hall of Fame caliber, and Adam does not like what the Raiders are bringing.
I love Devontae Adams. I think Russell Gage is real good. Jacoby Myers is not a number 2 in this league. He is not. I'm sorry. It's not even close.
You could flip flop the Raiders and I don't know, maybe the Saints for me.
I'd put the Ravens up there. I think this one's being slept on hard. OBJ, and you'd be like, well, he's coming off the injury. Yeah, I have faith. That guy's a freak. If anybody can come back from a knee injury with as much time as he's had to come back from it,
a year,
that looks good. Bateman's a nice player. He's a nice number 2. I think he's a very good receiver. And then Brandan, you're very high on Zay Flowers.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the same argument with the JSN thing, right? Like a good rookie, you put him in there, you expect him to be good. And then Aguilar is your 4. Okay. I mean, that guy can play receiver in the league. And as a 4, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. You bet. The Ravens probably would be the group that will be the biggest mover in this when we look back on this in a year. That'd be my guess.
Well, with Lamar, that makes a lot of sense too, just because of the quarterback. I mean, the other group based on quarterback that's going to move up is the Jets with Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Mecole Hardman, Corey Davis, and Randall Cobb.
I just feel like I think Wilson's nice. I think Lazard will. I mean, then you
some of those guys are a little old, but yes.
Well, Randall Cobb is old. Corey Davis at this point is not. He's fine, and he'll be better. They will all be better because of the quarterback. Mecole Hardman, okay. Lazard is pretty good. He also he still dropped a lot of passes, like the wide open from Rodgers before too. So I'm just not too blown away by that particular core.
I'm not so sure why we're arguing 11 through 20 when clearly he got it right at the top of the list with the Seahawks being in the top 3.
Yeah, and I'd like to see. I mean, I think Seattle can bolt into the 1 is kind of the point of the exercise too. And I know it's a very Homer-centric view, but I just go back to Boyd versus JSN. I just don't think there's a 3 on this board. When we get done or halfway through the year, we'll be looking at this being like, there is no triplets in this league that, as long as we stay healthy, no triplets in this league that could compare with our 3 guys. It's not going to be particularly close, in my opinion.
So, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf. Let's look at that real quick. And we'll go with this versus Bengals versus Seahawks here. You're starting your franchise today.
Chase.
Yeah, I'd go Chase.
Man, I think
no way.
Oh, come on.
I would definitely go.
Dude, Jamar Chase.
And I love Jamar Chase. He's easily a top 3 receiver in this league.
Probably number 1. He's probably number 1.
Boy, I think DK brings more to your team in a lot of different ways than Jamar Chase. It just the physicality of it. I'd rather have the big bodied guy. To me,
Chase is not a small dude.
Chase is a big dude.
Yeah. Is he DK Metcalf big?
No,
that's what I'm getting at. DK is special. And he's produced every single year, just like Jamar Chase has. And you get the extra size. Yeah. And the attitude. I'm taking DK there. T. Higgins, again, a good number 2, a very good number 2. Him over a professional Tyler Lockett, a guy who is nothing but a silent killer season after season after season. I like Tyler Lockett better than T. Higgins. Now, does that mean that in 5 years, Tyler Lockett's going to be better than T. Higgins? No, he's older.
Yeah.
But right now, today, at this ring, I take Tyler over him. And then the potential of JSN, yeah, I take that over Tyler Boyd.
How much do you know about Trenton Irwin, though?
Trenton Irwin is a guy that has really fluid hips, and he has no wasted steps. Would you take him
over Dwayne Eskridge?
I'm still holding out hope for the Eskridge here. But yeah, I probably would, because he doesn't get hurt every 35 seconds. So
that you know of.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think you're. I would definitely think we are on different waves about Jamar Chase and DK.
I love Jamar
That's
Chase.
okay.
I'm not. That's just how much I love.
And that's okay. But I think
I love DK because yes, he is ours. But if we were to redraft and take wide receivers, it'd be pretty tough not to take Jamar Chase.
Is Jamar Chase without Joe Burrow?
Have we ever seen him without Joe Burrow?
I mean,
that's what I'm getting at. And so then you look at DK at a bad last year for Russ, and then
you don't have to
bringing
try
in
and win me
Geno.
over and how much I love DK. I love DK. What?
I know.
Fight about
I'm
this.
just putting it out there for the random Bengals fan that views this and is like, "You crazy?" You know, some AFC guy. And that's the thing is, I watch NFC football way more than AFC football, and so some of that bias could be into this as well.
Yeah, which is totally fine. I will say, I think come the end of the year, or even 6, 7, 8 weeks in, I think we're going to be looking at this wide receiver power rankings, if that's a thing, and I think it's going to be evident that we've got the best group in the league, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Now, your question earlier, Adam, about like what does it come at the expense of is interesting. It's like, are we going to basically not do any more 13 personnel? That was really successful. 13 personnel being 3 tight ends, right? That was really successful last year. Are we going to do any of that? How much less 12 personnel are we going to do now if we're going to do quite a bit more of 11 personnel? The piece for me that I do think grooves more is that in my brain, this is the offense that Shane Waldron always wanted to run. Like, this is the sculpted thing he wanted, because this is where he came from. This is what they ran with the Rams. And when they took D. Eskridge, this is what they were hoping to have. They were hoping to be an 11 personnel more. It just didn't work out yet. So they got crafty. And I think that's credit due to like looking at what you got on the chessboard and being like, we're going to deploy you this way. And it was actually really successful by any measure offensively. It'll be interesting as he turns those dials this year to see if it works just as good or that much better. And I'm excited to see it. But I think Waldron's going to kind of finally have everything in the bag that he was hoping to have, dude.
I mean, maybe we don't know for sure exactly how Waldron thinks, if he wants to trot out the exact same McVay offense, or if one of the reasons he was hired to coach with Pete was that he had some different ideas and liked a few different bigger personnel formations and things like that. I mean, we don't know that. The one thing that I do worry about is, so you draft Charbonnet and you got K9, and then you draft the third receiver, and now you're running more 11 personnel and you're throwing the ball a little bit more. Well, now does that, just the drafting of Charbonnet takes away a few touches from Walker. Now, does that reduce it even further with them running a lot more 11 personnel and things like that? And you get further out of balance, which is something that I fear a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I don't worry about him taking snaps away from Kenneth Walker so much as
snaps and carries are two different things.
Okay, carries. The way I look at the Charbonnet pick is that he's going to take away carries from DJ Dallas, and I'm okay with that.
See, I see it a little bit differently. I agree that DJ Dallas is going to be the odd man out here on purpose, right? It's like, hey, really nice third back. Although now we got McIntosh from Georgia who might step into that role right away too. I don't know. I think the Charbonnet pick, we talked about this at the live reaction after one of the pods. My big philosophy was they did all of this to improve third down. Every single pick that they took, to me, screams they want to improve third down efficiency, especially offensively. Charbonnet, 3rd and 2 versus Ken Walker, who sometimes would give up those plays where the boomer bust and he could go backwards 5 yards, and you're like, come on, dude, just go forward. We know he got better at it. We know he's a rookie. And I could just see Charbonnet stepping right into that and in a positive way, and just being the dude that Carroll like trusts early to get those third down touches. So I actually do think that K9 will suffer a little bit statistically. And then if it's like goal line work, remember last year, Seattle did not punch the ball in like inside the 10. It was shots just outside the red zone, or shots like, outside the green zone, but outside the 10-yard. And then actually inside the 5-yard line, Geno was not good. If there's one area where Geno was like quite below average, which is probably the hardest area in the field because everything is so dense, he threw a lot of danger balls like around the 5-yard line. Some of them dropped, some of them caught for interceptions, but barely out of bounds. If you guys recall a few of those too. I think that's going to be Charbonnet season, boys. I really do. And I think we're going to be seeing him get a lot of that action down at that
Hopefully
point.
He's good at it, because I don't know if he was that great at it in college to where it jumps out at me saying he's going to be the guy inside the 10. I honestly, none of the running backs that are on the team right now scream, give that dude the football inside the 5-yard line. So that could be a spot where we struggle again this year.
So who's our fourth back then? Who's gonna get the fourth touches there at?
DJ Dallas, because I
Could be.
actually like McIntosh quite a bit. In this is one of the reasons why I'm having a hard time keeping the hype out of my brain on this draft class, because I get all the way down to the 7th round pick of McIntosh, and I'm like, damn, this dude can play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a baller. I don't care what his 40 was. He's good. 0 to 20. Like, that's great. I could take that all day. He's a reliable receiver. He's a smart runner. The one bonus Charbonnet has in the short yardage stuff is he doesn't take a loss very often. He does fall forward, that sort of thing. But to your point, Brandon, he's not LT. Like, he's not a guy, or even Sean Alexander, where you're like, yeah, it's just money down there. They can just slam it in there. And they haven't been good at that for a long time.
Yeah.
So maybe the Jitterbug receiver is the one that gets it done with all the option routes, and you're not throwing fades and all that stupid nonsense. Maybe JSN is the guy for that, and he really unlocks it that way. That's something I'm hopeful for.
Oh, man. So when you watch his feet at the line of scrimmage, does it not remind you of some of the stuff that Doug Baldwin would just do to make corners and it just look silly?
Heck yeah, dude. It's so, and going back and like, okay, what did Doug was 5'10", 190. All right. JSN 6'1.5", 200. Doug ran a 4.48. JSN ran a 4.52 at the combine, a 4.48 at his pro day. Then you just watch the tape and he's just doing those things. It's like you could almost imagine him sitting in his dorm room or sitting there in like high school watching Doug Baldwin do these things, because he's doing them and he's at an exceptional level. And then he's open, and then he's open, and then he's open, and then he's open. And I'm just telling you, boys, when you combine Geno, his ability to process with all those weapons out there, and you give this guy this elite separator, it's
gotta have time to process.
Correct. I got you. But I think we upgraded our offensive line. We got year 2 for our tackles. I think our center's better. We'll see about guard. I don't think the right guard play could be tremendously worse, because it wasn't good. It was already.
I don't never know, but you never know.
But even as a backstop, you got beefy boy Haynes, who played half the year there.
Yeah, like he's okay.
He might be your front stop.
Correct, but I'm saying if that's the barrel, that's the bottom of it. Well, he played half of last year and was better than. Geez, the name's escaping me already, which is bad. The
Dave Jackson.
Yeah. The extra rated.
Yeah. They were on par with one another. Okay, so the worst case scenario is that the weak point on your offensive line is still the weak point on your offensive line.
Right, with an upgraded center, which
at least bigger, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely bigger. Right, definitely bigger. Evan Brown's a big boy.
And better. I mean, obviously better at center.
Obviously better, Brandon says. Okay. All right.
Yes,
the Blythe whipping shall commence.
we don't say anything bad about our Seahawks players ever. Come on.
They're retired, go off into the sunset. Austin, enjoy your time away from football and far, far away from the PNW. Thank you, Austin.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Yeah, go Hawks.